I couldn't help in reading the most recent story that's been developing over the last few weeks. If you haven't heard, Immortals Gaming Club, parent company to Immortals, MIBR, and the OWL's own Los Angeles Valiant, are very likely to be successful in the purchase of Infinite Esports. And for those that may not be aware, Infinite Esports own OpTic Gaming and the Houston Outlaws. So with this purchase that Immortals could be making, they would essentially own the rights to OpTic Gaming and pretty much be able to do whatever they want with it. So let's kind of lay out my opinion on this, because this is a very fascinating story and one that happens to be revolving around one of the biggest esports brands in the entire world. So I want to kind of outline the possible outcomes or scenarios that could be revolving around this situation. And like I said, this has been gaining everybody's attention. This has been the main topic on a number of different news outlets. I know Esports Insider and Upcomer have been really kind of major sources of information as of recently, and making a lot of reports, a lot of claims about things that are kind of going on behind the scenes. But this is interesting, right? Because OpTic Gaming is the foundation of Call of Duty Esports. This is where they got their start. One of the biggest brands in, pretty much the world in terms of esports is kind of having a lot of turmoil problems, ones that revolve around their entire organization. And obviously it's interesting from my point of view as someone who comes from the Call of Duty community and seeing their kind of come up over the last decade. It's interesting to kind of see the situation that they're in, and it happens to obviously be OpTic. And for those who are in the Call of Duty community, you know exactly what I mean. So let's kind of go over the scenarios that could be going down, like I said, according to the reports made by Esports Insider, Upcomer, etc. So the first scenario that seems to be the most likely that is out there right now is that Immortals are pretty much going to buy Infinite Esports, and let's say that they keep OpTic Gaming in this scenario, because there's a lot of different alternatives here. Now, being broad, Immortals would pretty much get OpTic's LCS spot, plus they would get the rights to all other games. However, and pretty much based on how the OWL works, and in the rules, it pretty much states that teams, or rather ownership groups, can't own more than one spot. So since Immortals already own the Los Angeles Valiant, and in turn, they no longer, or rather can't own the the spot, the Houston Outlaws as well. So in this scenario I'm making, let's say that they keep the Call of Duty team and pursue franchising, most likely want to try and fight for the LA spot in this situation, because they have no ties to Houston at this moment. If they have to legally sell the Houston Outlaws because of the way the Overwatch League works, well, we have no ties to the city. Why would we want to be here in the first place? So in my eyes, if they were to move on with Call of Duty, keep that game and maybe keep a few others as well, they probably want to move the operations to Los Angeles, because that's where Call of Duty would be pretty much their city in that instance. So at that point, Hex would have the choice, and at least in my eyes, to possibly be the CEO of how he was at OpTic, but in this situation, he would obviously be the CEO of Immortals, or possibly maybe even just the day-to-day operations. I don't know all the details of everything, but he would pretty much be in the same position he has now to a point, but just under Immortals, maybe kind of doing, like I said, the day-to-day operations with the consoles side, more specifically with Call of Duty if they were to keep it. And like I said, this could be a positive or a negative, right, in terms of this were to come to pass. This could be a positive in terms of maybe he has more freedom, right? Maybe he has the ability to kind of do what he wants. There's a lot of rumors that were kind of going around for the last, few months that, in terms of how Infinite's treating things, it's not pretty much being treated correctly. The content creators, the professional players are not happy with the way that they're being treated, the way that things are kind of being dealt with. So if that's the case, maybe this could be a more freeing situation, one that allows for a lot more opportunity, just because the name changes, while it is unfortunate, because that's pretty much what Hector and rather the OpTic brand has been trying to work on for the last decade now, would be over, but in turn, he could still do the same type of thing. But at the same time, if it were to be more of a negative, you don't know how Immortals is going to act, right? We don't know how, in turn, they're going to act in terms of Call of Duty. Maybe they could want to do a lot with it. Maybe they really aren't that interested in it. Maybe it could be worse than Infinite's kind of situation. I wouldn't imagine it would be. I would say probably the same, if not better. But regardless, though, those are a few outcomes that could be a possibility. It could be positive, or it could be worse. Now, the next scenario that I see, very similar to the first, Immortals buys Infinite Esports, but sell OpTic Gaming. So similar to the first situation I laid out, Immortals gain ownership of the LCS spot, which is, this is happening. Based on all the reports that have come out, Esports Insider, Upcomer, this is going to happen. They want the LCS spot. That's pretty much been the one thing that they have been on a tear to try to get ever since they were initially denied by the LCS. They want to get a League of Legends spot. That's going to happen no matter what. They're going to get that. Everything else is kind of up for grabs for the most part in terms of, or outside of the Overwatch League for the Valiant. But like I said, much similar to the first situation, they would then sell the OWL spot in terms of the Houston Outlaws because they don't have the rights to own it because of rules and guidelines. And let's say they have no interest in this situation in Call of Duty franchising. Well, what happens to OpTic Gaming CoD then? What happens to the team if pretty much the organization who buys them out doesn't want to be in Call of Duty anymore? My guess is if Hex can't work out a personal purchase of his own, we will see retirement. Depending on how contracts work, we could see end of the year retirements, or we could see players pretty much either get outright sold as a package or separately. And I think personally, if Immortals have no interest in being in Call of Duty next year, they'll probably have to do it separately because of the opportunity that there is out there of retirement. Because I think Krim has the opportunity to do so. I think Scump does as well, and possibly Karma. I think Dashy and TJ are still kind of on the table if this were to come about. And so I think trying to sell them as a team probably wouldn't work too well if you probably already have a few maybe stepping down, 1, 2, or 3. Let's say you have a team of 3 or a team of 4. You know, you're not going to have the opportunity to kind of sell them maybe as a package. So maybe some teams would be interested. Like I said, it's kind of up in the air regardless, though. I think we'll see more retire than maybe some think. And at that point, you're going to have a lot of OWL teams who have first dibs. The first 5 locations already have the opportunity to go ahead and try to grab some of these players if it were to come about soon in terms of Dallas and Toronto being Envy and Splice more specifically. Then you have Paris, you have Atlanta, and you have New York. And like I said, this could also be a factor, depending on when it happens, for even upcoming roster change periods. Because like I said, if Envy and Splice, who were already in the Call of Duty World League, want to work out something, let's say that they managed to get Dashy out of this all, well, you can probably imagine that they want to try to add them as soon as possible. So I would imagine at this point, if this were to come about, along with the Counter-Strike spot, which will be sold as well, Call of Duty and then probably Gears of War would follow if it already won't. So let's be clear, this is a very real possibility. There's a really good chance Immortals have no interest in wanting to be invested in an esport that they have no prior ties to. Why would we want to be involved in an esport that a lot of people are deeming right now as risky? Do we really want to spend an extra $25 million when we probably already spent a rumored $150 million on this one as well? Hey, I don't know how their money works. Maybe it is. Maybe it isn't. Depending, they may or may not be interested, and possibly depending on how the players react to the situation. If we do see retirement, maybe that's going to add into a factor of, hey, we probably don't want to keep this team. They don't want to be with us either. We're already seeing retirement. We'd probably be best off just selling in the first place. Now, next possible scenario that could come through is Hex and his ownership group buys out Infinite Esports and has control of OpTic again. So this has been a recently kind of added alternative through reports that have come out, obviously due to the sources that I've mentioned. Apparently, Hector is working out possibly a few scenarios, trying to work out with a few individuals to purchase back the brand. Like I said, the alleged price was estimated around $150 million for this kind of portion of Infinite Esports to kind of buy it out. So, and like I said, in one particular report, it suggested that Hector and his group offered more, but Infinite preferred selling to Immortals. Like I said, that's kind of been up in the air. We're not really 100% sure if that is actually the case or not. Regardless, what would happen in this scenario is that if Hex and the ownership group earned the rights to OpTic Gaming, they would have the LOL spot, they would have the Houston Outlaws, they would have Call of Duty, CS, Gears of War, etc., and they would pretty much earn these spots because they previously, if you're in turn Hector's situation, you didn't own them, right? You might have owned, the teams, but once they have kind of under Infinite Esports, he didn't really ever own the League of Legends spot. He didn't really ever own, a few other spots as well in turn. So, or rather the Houston Outlaws. So in this situation, it would be him kind of gaining things rather than getting them back, if you get my point. Regardless, though, it's going to be a lot of money, right? It's going to be a lot of cash that they have to throw out there to be on the line. If you want to enter Call of Duty franchising, along with the $150 million you've already raised, at least, it's going to be another $25 million on top of that. So is there enough money to gain? Is there enough kind of partners that you can group around to make that amount of money up in a very short time, which the deadline, according to, I think it was Texas Esports, which is the majority owner of Infinite Esports, says that this is ending by May 31st. They only have a short amount of time to get all of this money up. So is it even possible? If it is, will it go to them? We don't know. Let's move on to the last scenario. Hex and the ownership group, let's say that they failed to purchase Infinite Esports, and now what do? Let's say they make their own brand. And this could be a real chance. I really do. I mean, at this point, if you're in the realm of esports, the way that these guys are, Hector more specifically, what are you going to do now? Are you just going to quit esports? Like, what happens at this point? No, I think that they would probably try to make their own brand, try to relive, try to make everything again. So instead, if it doesn't work out, if Immortals end up getting the purchase in this situation, you know, if Hex and the majority group, I know there's a few people involved with Infinite previously, et cetera, et cetera. Let's say that they don't end up getting the spot and that Hex denies the position that the Immortals will probably offer him. I think that he would probably try and buy the COD team from Immortals, right? If they're not interested, if they're saying, and this is what I would imagine, if players are attempting to retire if they have to play for Immortals, if they're saying that, hey, we're probably not interested in playing for franchising next year, well, Hex has the ability to earn a franchise spot. He has the ability to buy one himself, and he can also buy the team from them and put him on his own roster. And that depends if Immortals is interested. Like I said, I think this could be a real possibility if it were to work out this way, that, you know, they could try to form their own brand. And the one thing that I've heard a lot throughout a lot of these comments is, oh my gosh, can you imagine if we lose OpTic? If we lose OpTic and CoD, what's going to happen next? Well, regardless of whatever scenario we're talking about, OpTic will not be in Call of Duty next year. The name itself is not going to be in Call of Duty for the rest of time, right? It's just not possible because of everything that we have noticed from the franchise league, everything that has been rumored, everything, all the talk that has been out there among how they want to be as similar, the Call of Duty League wants to be as similar to the Overwatch League as possible based on everything that we have discussed. You really think that they're going to go from city locations to rebranding everything and making these team names probably go to something else? They're going to make the team names change. It only makes sense. There's no way they're not going to do that. So for me, regardless, the name of OpTic at the very least is not going to be in Call of Duty next year. The same way that Envy will not. The same way that Splice will not. The same way if teams like FaZe, 100T, etc. can try to get in, their names are also going to have to be different in some fashion, you know, to a point. So for me, the people that are currently, you know, kind of going crazy about this don't understand the logistics of what's going to happen next year for franchise, because everything is different next year no matter what, right? Everything is different for the most part. But for me, the people behind OpTic are obviously going to change. That's probably happening. That will happen at the very least. So I would say at this moment, I'm conflicted in terms of what I think is really going to be the case. I'm kind of leaning toward the first scenario. I think that one is the most likely, according to, like I said, those reports that have been made out from Esports Insider and Upcomer. It sounds as if that is going to be the case. And recently from ESPN, Jacob Wolf has been reporting and saying that how Infinite Esports would like to meet with Hex alongside Immortals. The wording of the particular article kind of sounds interesting, because if I were reading this the way that I would assume, which is the way that I did, it looks as if they want Hex to meet alongside Immortals with Infinite. And if that's the case, then that probably means that Immortals has a really good situation, and they're trying to work out Hex's kind of progression from that now to Immortals. Is he going to have a position? What positions could he have? How is this going to work out? What operations? What would he pretty much be in control of? I don't know why they'd want to bring in both parties who are pretty much in a bidding war, from at least what it sounds like, in with each other to try and discuss this. I just don't think that would really be the case. So, like I said, I don't really know what's going to happen with this situation, but make sure, if you are interested, to be tuning in to the Esports Dispatch. We'll be pretty much getting you updated with everything as this story will continue. As we learn more, we will be updating you.